Welcome to Make a Path Presents. Today, let's talk The Walking Dead, Season 6, Episode 13, Afterthoughts. Alright, as always, we're going to try not to repeat ourselves, and what I do not discuss in this video most likely is something we talked about in the previous first impression review of this episode, and the only things I'll pretty much repeat are some things I want to go deeper on and explain in more detail. And again, if we don't touch on certain things and you think it's important or it's something you want to discuss, go ahead and leave those down in the comment box. Starting this right off, I want to get this out of the way. We do know that Carol misses the guy on purpose, and in rewatching it again, we see her move her aim, and at first I thought it was like, she was aiming, but it was kind of Maggie was in the way when I first watched it. But later on in the episode, Carol confirms that she missed him on purpose. And that's a struggle she's fighting with. She even says, she's like, something that I don't agree with, but I don't know. She even says, all this could have been avoided if I would have just killed him. Which again, I don't agree with, because even if they killed him, they had the other two people, it would have been a shootout. I don't know how that would have went down. But the conflict within her that is still there, and it still highlights that conflict. Carol is at a point that Morgan brought this out of her, and it put it on her mind. In my opinion, I always believed this was there, that conflict was always there, but Morgan kind of highlighted it, so it's always there now, and it's always on her mind. And the conflict is the fact that sometimes you just have to kill, but there's moments where it's debatable. Like, do you have to kill this person, or, can you let them go, or is there another alternative at hand? And Carol shows that in this episode when she tells the girl, Paula is her name, she's like, just run, or I told you to run. That whole back and forth essentially breaks down what Carol's going through. Is there another option? In my opinion, we've seen when it comes to having to kill, like, absolutely, with an absolute, Carol doesn't hesitate. When that chick pulls out the knife, Carol just comes up, blasts her in the head, and it's just like, it's over, So the conflict there, in my opinion, for Carol, and the major change is there another option? That's what I see. I do want to talk about the walkie-talkie code, and let's just run briefly through this. I'll put up a couple images, but what she says, Paula, the leader, on the walkie is Omega, Omega, Saviors down. Go to Gamma, code fire. Alpha channel is not clear. Now, Alpha channel is what she's talking to Rick on, and she says, follow the protocol. And then she says, where are you guys? And they respond out west of and it starts getting staticky, 15 miles on the way. She replies, they're headed to the break point. Switch to Theta channel, I believe it's pronounced. Same code. And if she's not on that channel, switch to Alpha and listen in. And what she's saying is, if she's talking with Rick and them, buying her time, go ahead and listen in to see what they're saying. Now that covers her bases throughout what happens. And later on in the episode, they do call this a safe house. So, and they call them, the people they're talking to, they call them the scout crew. Two things to break this down real quick is, what we have an area where, just from pulling bits and pieces from the story, they use this area for different things. One is for storage. I guess they did say they stored gas here, or at least they implied that, because the girl said she stole gas to go look for her boyfriend. They also do use this to keep people trapped in and to keep enemies out. They have the walkers chained up or stuck on poles, and this is something we're most likely gonna see more and more, depending on how many different outposts and whenever we see the headquarters of the Saviors, most likely in Season 7. So we get this idea that this is like a little area that they run to, that they store things at, and where she was, that was their little mini community of Saviors. They are Saviors, you know what I mean? But it's their little community. It's not the main headquarters of the Saviors. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I believe that even though they said we are all the Saviors, with the guy's admission at the end being like, alright shithead, I'm Negan, let's chit chat. And I really think the guy saying that, being a prick, saying let's talk, and he didn't think Rick was just going to kill him. And Rick's not playing around. I love that moment in the episode. That was one of the best. A lot of things that happened in the end were some of the best. best and some of the worst, and we'll get to that. But anyway, so in my opinion, they have the building that they went in and they killed all the saviors in the building in their sleep. Then Paula's group that Carol and Maggie killed, and then the scouts that came in that Carol and Maggie burnt up. So they could actually possibly believe that that's all the saviors. In my opinion, I think that is going to be their train of thought. They might think there's more out there, but that could actually be all of them. I'm not saying that is all of them. I'm saying if they thought that would be all of them, I don't blame them for that, because that literally is every single one they knew of, and they did not reveal what happened on the bike. And I think that's a clever part, because the guy's like, we just found it. Now, if they said, oh, we took it off of Dwight, Daryl could know, okay, well, there's got to be more people out there. There's got to be, because if they took Dwight, he's with them, and he's not in here. He hasn't been killed in this group, so it's a good thing they kept that dialogue that way, and I think they did it on purpose, so our group didn't know there's more saviors out there. I do believe that's going to be a surprise reveal, the saviors coming back and attacking, either at Alexandria or while they're on a run. I want to move right to Carol hyperventilating next when she's tied up. This is something that at the time I believed it was more fake. She was doing it more to put on a show. She's in character, and it really feels like she is in character. Now, there's clear conflict within her, and that's all real. That's fine. But the getting the cross, she puts it in her pocket, but she leaves some of it exposed. She puts on this show and goes for it in front of the other person, the Molly girl. The hyperventilating, all of it, in my opinion, was like this play that she's putting on, this front that she's weak to kind of let the others put their guard down around her, and it's a perfect plan. It works perfectly. However, in the behind-the-scenes features, they edit the shit out of the behind-the-scenes features, but it sounds like Greg Nicotero and another guy say that Carol's really hyperventilating, like she's really going through this whoop-de-whoop, and that's all real. Now, I do have a problem because they edited that in a way where that might not be exactly what they mean, but it is what they say to a certain extent. If you watch how it's edited, it is a little misleading. Now, if they come right out and say, oh no, we totally meant that, she's totally, hyperventilating for real, okay, if she's claustrophobic, alright, whatever, but that, to me, takes away from the scene. If Carol is putting on this show, and I'm not talking about the conflict within her about killing, I'm talking about the whole ordeal with the cross and the hyperventilating, whoop-de-whoop. If that's real, I feel like it hurts the story. If it's a combination of there's real parts in it, which is most likely what is happening, but for the most part, she's playing with them. She's putting on a play. That, in my opinion, fits the character and the scene a lot better, in my opinion. One quote I loved in this episode, though, is when the girl goes to Maggie. She says, the point is to stay standing. And Maggie says, no, the walkers stand. Or the walkers do that, I think she says. And she's talking about her choice of getting pregnant and raising this child. And I think that's such a subtle quote that is powerful enough to kind of contain the whole idea of Glenn and Maggie having a baby and establishing a family, in that the community and everything. I think that one whole line, the whole point is to stay standing. No, even walkers can do that. I think that is just a powerful message in that one line. Now, real quick, the Michelle girl, which they call her Shelly in this episode, a couple things I want to point out. One is from the comic. Not a spoiler, but in the comic, Maggie's pregnant as well, and she'll later go on to name her child after her father, Herschel. Now, it's interesting that the girl she's talking to, the Shelley girl, was missing her pinky because she stole gas from that same safe house, and she used it to go look for her boyfriend, which is one of the guys that Daryl blew up. I love how that story, comes full circle. But the funny thing is, she says that she had a baby, I guess previously. Maybe she was pregnant before or during the apocalypse, something. I didn't pick up on the fine details, but essentially her father's name was Frankie, and she was going to name the baby after her father. I got the idea that that was in the beginning of the apocalypse and she lost a baby during, but it could be anything. I could have missed that. But the point is, it's another little subtlety to highlight how close the Michelle and Maggie characters are. They could have been best friends if they met back at the RV in season 1. Season 2, sorry. They could have been close survivors. But they didn't. They survived separately and met in these circumstances that now makes them enemies. And I think that's very powerful. The same thing goes for Paula and Carol. And again, I do believe this episode is stretched out more than it should have been. But I appreciate the message and the symbolism there. Especially when Paula says, I'm not like you to Carol. I'm still me, she says, but better. I lost everything and it made me stronger. And Carol shoots back with, are you sure about that? And then Paula's like, are you going to kill me? After Carol says, no, you're going to die in this situation. And Carol is like, I hope not. Now, honestly, I feel like there's too many close-ups, and they're not even just close-ups, they're extreme close-ups, and I feel like it would have been a powerful visual to have Carol looking helpless, tied up on the floor, saying this, and we know, like, man, this bitch is telling the truth. Like, Paula, you need to fall back, you're gonna die, she's gonna kill you. You know, she's going to get out, she's going to kill you. And they chose not to do that, and I strongly feel like that was an absolute mistake. On an interesting note, The Walking Dead's official Twitter did post this image saying they knew this scene looked familiar. Now, on Talking Dead, people said that they built this set specifically for this scene, so that kind of contradicts. However, they could have built this set, with the Saw set in mind. And I think that's absolutely awesome, having Carol and Maggie on each side of the room, tied up, very much like Saw, and then you have the dead zombie, the dead walker, on the floor, very much like Jigsaw was in Saw, on the floor. If you haven't seen Saw, sorry about the spoiler, but it's been years. Where the hell have you been? Anyhow, I think this is an awesome little tidbit. Just wanted to throw it in here. Even if it's not the same exact set, it looks like they did build the set to look like it. And I love when shows pay homage to other shows like that, other movies and stuff. I think it's pretty cool. We do have a zombie fail. I want to bring this up because I think the attention to detail and killing the zombies is very important, especially for consistency, because the moment she stabs the one zombie in the head and then the second one in the neck, I immediately, while watching that, was like, whoa, hold on. I turned to my cousin and was like, hey, did you see that? She stabbed the zombie in the neck. And he was like, oh, maybe she stabbed him in the spine or something, like on a real person, if they're done. And I said, well, that doesn't make sense either, and that's inconsistent because when they cut off the heads are still zombified, so that doesn't make any sense. Alright, let's knock out a couple flaws. At the end of this episode, it really felt like beginning screenwriting 101, and that's where people say things that I can't really buy a real person saying, and it essentially just sets up a kick-ass line after that. And it's kind of like, are you going to kill me, Carol? I hope not. See how it sets up that kick-ass line? I'm not talking about that particular one. I think that one was a little more organic. I'm talking about the very end where Carol has her gun out. I count that whole scene as a fail. I love what they were going for, but it feels like it was too forced. It was like they had a good idea, and they were like, well, let's just throw shit in here, dialogue and shit the characters do, that is stuff a real person would not say, and a real person would not do. Carol would not do. And what I'm talking about is when they're in that situation and the girl is like, oh, I thought you were scared and nervous, what happened to you, little birdie, whatever. Some of that there just felt like it was beginning screenwriting. It felt like, okay, I'm going to have the bad person say this so I can have the good guy say this badass line, and clue the audience in. Not only does she say it, but she also does something that I don't think she would ever do. She slowly walks up to the girl, and this is why I say it's a cool death, but it's forced, because they make Carol do something she shouldn't have done, which is slowly walk up to the girl, and then the girl does the laugh, and then she turns to hit Carol, and it's one of those over-dramatic movements where you see it coming a few seconds before it happens. Carol definitely could have just shot her as soon as she, turned around like that fast. But again, it's a necessity to get the cool death. I would have preferred if they did something, just jam the damn gun or something like that to where gun jams, the girl charges, they fight, and then she's thrown into the spike. I did not buy it at all that Carol would walk up that close to the girl just to execute her, because that's essentially what she was going to do. She told Maggie, I'll do it, you know? And it was a cool death. I will put that out there. It was a kick-ass death. I liked it. Afterwards, I do want to put this in here. I appreciate how Carol, the character, disguised her voice. She takes a moment, gets on the radio. Go and rewatch that. If you rewatch this episode, she actually disguises her voice to sound like Paula, and she does a damn good job, which really makes us wonder how much of this was she planning. Was she really focusing on how the girl talked all the way back when, in case the opportunity came up where she had to disguise her voice? I don't know, but I thought it was absolutely awesome. Another thing I want to point out here is when I defended her not having the right numbers, there was an article, remember the article was like, oh, Carol got it all wrong, this TV show doesn't know what they're doing. And I defended that by saying Carol can't just put a Blu-ray movie in and be like, hey, look, I got 22 kills. She's trying to remember. Now, when all that's going on, she's not going to remember every single kill. So she tells Maggie, and this is what highlights the fact that she doesn't know. She's not for sure. She says, I think I killed 18 people. And then she says 20. And I think that is awesome, because it shows that she's not sure. She doesn't remember how many she killed exactly. And two of my most favorite parts in this episode, one was actually something really subtle, and that was how efficient Rick and them are at tracking them down. We didn't see it. We got it from Carol and Maggie's perspective. They were in there. We never cut over to see Rick and them hunting them down, and I think that was an awesome choice, because it was so cool seeing them lift up the gate. Even before that, it was awesome hearing how they were getting closer on the walkie and there was no static, and you can hear Rick on the other end, like knowing him. You can hear him like, oh yeah, it's all good, just come on, let's end this, whoop-de-whoop. And you know, like, they're close. Rick has plan A, B, and C already. And then we see Glenn and Maggie, and it's nice seeing them reunite, even though it's like the fifth time. But it's still nice. The whole reveal of them tracking them down, I thought was awesome. And it's such a small thing, that's why I want to highlight it here. But another thing is, it's a combination of everything in this episode, but it's watching good people like Carol and Maggie, and it's watching what killing does to them. Like, killing is taking a toll on them. Carol is not okay, and Maggie, as she says in the episode, she just can't do this anymore. Maggie was the one who was like, beast mode, let's do this. Carol did what she needed to do, but Maggie was just kill, 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 let's get it over with. But by the end, burning those people alive was the last straw for both of those girls. And they're good people at heart. They're good people. They've done some shitty things, but at heart they're good people, and it's awesome watching the toll this world is taking and the damage it's doing on those people. It's breaking them, and I think that is awesome to see, especially in the end. I love that reunion with Glenn and Maggie, and she's like, I can't do this anymore. And with Daryl and Carol, that was incredibly awesome, in my opinion. I can only imagine what the fans who want them in a relationship was feeling at that moment. Another thing I want to mention, two of the last things, Rick just killing the guy. I talked about this before. I think Rick is like, okay, you're Negan, sorry this happened, bong, done. And I do believe Carol's going to talk about how they all are Negan, and that's probably going to get chalked up to them saying, okay, you know what, they're all Negan, but they're all dead, so let's move on, tell the hilltop, send Jesus back, they're dead, done, game over. But another thing is when Rick shoots him, a lot of people were asking me, what was the blood? And that was the sharp cross. Remember, Carol was grinding the cross down to cut through the tape? Well, when he shot him, she apparently clenched her fist, clenched the cross, and it stabbed into her, and that was the blood. Anyway, I love Rick's moment there where he doesn't hesitate, but he's sorry, and he has accepted this world. He's like, this is what the world is now. I'm sorry, you're a dick. You shouldn't have done what you done, but you're dead. And he puts him down. This episode, in my opinion, some parts I wanted to fast forward on the second viewing. The part I did actually fast forward a little where Paula was talking about who she was before all this. It's a character, even on second viewing, that is very interesting. She did a good job, the actress. However, on second viewing, I don't give a shit what her story was. I don't care who she was before, what happened with her boss, or her children. I don't care. And I know that's a shitty thing to say, and people are like, oh, it adds to her character. Nah, because it was a standalone, it was a one-and-done character. Bring her in for one episode, kill her, get her out of the way, and okay, it's good for character development. I just felt like this episode was stretched a little longer than it should have been. I still rate this as a good episode. I just think it's one of the more disappointing episodes as a whole. I would say a good 60% that could have been in a different episode with, 40% of fat trimmed off it, and it would have been just amazing scenes to deal with. Again, I am going to stick by the budget. I think this was a budget issue, but they got the message across. The change that's happening with Carol will affect that character going on, and the change that's happening with Maggie will most likely play a part in her entire future from this point on. Comic book fans have a hint at what that's going to be, even though they're going to change it up somewhat for the show. But we got somewhat of an idea. And if you don't mind, help me out. Hit that like. Keep spreading the word of mouth, because we are so close to 50,000 subscribers, on the road to 100K. Extremely excited for that. Huge thank you. As always, give me your thoughts and opinions about this episode down in that comment box. Stay tuned for the discussion about Negan and the absolute death coming. I'm done talking. It's your turn. Subscribe now.